This is a letters to the editor, LA Times. I'm a psychiatrist. Lawyers should not be assessing Biden's cognitive ability. They should not. That's right. Justice Department Special Counsel Robert Hur has training in neither psychiatry nor neurology, yet he included an assessment of Biden's cognitive functioning. Memory assessment is a complex task and cannot be undertaken over 5 hours in interviews with attorneys. Can you believe the gall of an attorney to diagnose? He is no doctor. How shocking and offensive would it be if members of the press were claiming the president was mentally unfit? Kind of like how the New York Times wrote, Trump is mentally unfit, no exam needed. 3 mental health professionals who contributed to the dangerous case of Donald Trump cite recent actions that confirm their worries. And additionally, from the New York Times, memory loss requires careful diagnosis, scientists say. A federal investigator said that Biden had a poor memory, but such a diagnosis would require close medical assessment, experts said. You know what, man? Shout out to Defiant L's on X. This is just, we're done with the narrative, okay? Mm-hmm. I placed a bet on the Chiefs to win the Super Bowl because we know, like, there's a narrative. Mm-hmm. Okay, maybe there isn't, but I won $100. My point is, how can the New York Times think they will get this over the American people at this point? LA Times publishing a letter to the editor saying, you can't diagnose the president in this way. He's just a lawyer. Oh, the lawyer said that Biden didn't remember when he was vice president. Okay, so at a certain point, we can see through the lies of the corporate press. And it's just smack dab right. And so I tell everybody, just share this. Share this segment right here with anybody who disagrees and be like, look what the media does. Both these things can't be true.
Right.
But at this point, I think after 10 years of this, I'm seeing videos of like Gen Z people that are just screaming MAGA. They're just over it. The fake news, the political correctness. So I'm, look, with like the Bud Light collapse and all of that stuff and all these culture victory wins, culture war victories, I'm feeling pretty optimistic. And then I'll add too, especially with them putting that impeachment time bomb for Donald Trump. I'm like, man, Trump's going to win, isn't he?
I think I don't like to take anything for granted, but I think he's in a much stronger position than the Democrats were hoping at this point. And I think it really does have to do with young voters who grew up disenfranchised by both culture and the economic situation. I mean, things were better under Trump. They're old enough to remember that, even if they weren't necessarily paying taxes themselves. I'm thinking about like the 18-year-old, 19-year-old voters. But things are very bad under Biden when they are going into adulthood. I think there are a lot of reasons that young people would be deterred or turned off by the Biden campaign.
I wonder if Gen Z, with stories like this, where they're running 2 different narratives, at a certain point, they just will look at the corporate press like nothing. It's just a gag. It's all the Onion. It's all the Babylon Bee. I mean, the Babylon Bee struggles to keep up with reality at this point. And so I'm kind of thinking that the corporate press is in decay. They're collapsing. I mean, we saw one of the biggest wave of layoffs we've seen in a long time in the past couple of weeks. Why would any young person growing up believe any of this stuff?
Yeah, they don't believe any of it.
And they don't get their news from it, right? I mean, we know that they prefer YouTube. They're more likely to be on social media. These traditional outlets of saying this is where you get information and we get to say it's right are just kind of not applicable to the lives of the youngest Americans.
The I don't know what you would call them, but the influencers on TikTok that are actually news, that are actually giving out news. When it comes to like what you would consider, and I hate to use any kind of frame that privileges one news source over another nowadays is, in my opinion, it's really not useful. But people that you had associated historically with professional news, professional journalists and stuff, are they who you go to on TikTok to actually get news, or is it mostly like word of mouth, hearsay, friends sharing stuff, you know?
It's same thing with this guy that, this expert class that they're trying to make us believe in after the COVID crisis and all the nonsense that went down there. This is the science.
But that was the status quo. The status quo was a credentialism.
Yes.
So with the rise of the internet, now it's, I remember going to these, I went to, what was it? It was in the Netherlands. It was a broadcasters convention. And they had me speaking on a side stage in the back. And at the main stage, they had 3 professional journalists talking about how citizen journalists and independent media is unreliable and dangerous and should be ignored.
Yeah.
And that was the nature of what the news industry wants to do. They want to say, no, those rabble rousers are lying to you. It's all misinformation. Trust us.
Well, the New York Times had this, they have a political podcast out. They're tracking campaign stuff. And I remember listening to it, and one of the guys went to the Iowa State Fair because so many presidential candidates go there and, stump around, do whatever. And he would approach, the whole episode was about, why do people support Trump, or why are they planning on not supporting Trump? And he'd walk up to people and say, I'm a reporter from the New York Times. Can I just talk to you about the election for a couple minutes? And they'd be like, the New York Times? Like, they didn't trust the New York Times. They don't want to be affiliated with New York Times. And even this was true of voters who were very pro-Trump, and also just other Republican voters who were saying, oh, I like Tim Scott or whatever else. Like, the media institution is known for its bias, and people don't care to take part in it anymore.
Nobody believes the regime, basically.
I'm feeling pretty good, I think I'm wondering if it's actually going to be as bad as we might have thought it was going to be this year. Because with all there is weird stuff happening already, but watching the media just implode the way they did, I don't think people understand how much of a white pill that was to see the LA Times and, a bunch of other media outlets.
A bunch of them had huge
ESPN,
layoffs.
I think TechCrunch, they're all having massive layoffs. Right. And I'm like, that's it. Their version of reality is almost dead.
Who laid off their
That's great.
Who laid off their Washington bureau? Like,
LA Times
during an election year. It's crazy.
No, but even the Wall Street Journal shaved off some of their political reporters.
A couple of them did, and that's and like you're mentioning TechCrunch. Like, it's not just the political side that's falling apart. It's also the business, the technology. Like, they can't keep anything together from any angle, so they are losing track of all of the narratives. It's wild to me.
I'm having a good time.
It's good stuff. Absolutely.
It's going to be interesting what happens in 6 months. I mean, when media is getting rid of their political reporting in one of the most important election years, I mean, that's indicative of just they're done. Remarkably, it's wild. And then I wonder, I with that being said, I mean, where are those readers for the LA Times going to go? What will they read?
Well, I think about this with the Condé Nast layoffs that they sort of announced at the end of the year, and they sparked some protests. And Condé Nast does like Vogue, GQ. They do cultural stuff. Yeah, they might talk about a little bit of politics, but really, I think of them as cultural things. And ultimately, every single one of their columnists who said, this is the best dress, whatever, or watch this movie, they're completely replaced by social media influencers. There's nowhere for them to go unless they adjust to the new social media landscape.
Well, let's hope there's less NPCs out there to be the audience for these news outlets altogether.
Maybe.
I don't know about fewer NPCs. I don't have a whole lot of hope for that.
I'm not sure they're mass producing them fast enough, except through AI. Look.
And I think there are people who are NPCs. They will be NPCs forever.
Yeah.
It's just a question of what is the prevailing authority. And so if the corporate press withers away and it ends up as a dry, withered husk in the corner of the room that no one pays attention to, the NPCs will just march in lockstep with whatever we say. And so... It sucks. They don't think independently, but it's better they're marching in a better direction towards something more positive.
And that kind of goes back to the point that I was trying to make earlier about like trying to bring people in. You don't want to make everyone an enemy. What you want to do is you win by making everyone your friend, not by defeating enemies, because these people don't go away. Again, this is something that Jordan Peterson made a point about it, 6 or 7 years ago when he was talking about Trump or Trump voters. He's like, what are you people that hate Trump? What are you going to do if you beat him? Because half your country thinks like he does. And you can't make those people go away. So the thing to do, that's why my perspective isn't that we need to defeat the left.
We need to put them in re-education camps.
You heard it here first. Phil's pro re-education camps.
I'm not. I can't even touch it, man. I can't even touch it. So, but yes, I mean,
no, finish your thought. I was waiting for the right moment to inject that in there.
But just, I mean, the point is, we can't make enemies of fellow Americans. We have to convince them that they have been lied to and subverted by a subversive ideology. That's what the left is.
I think a subversive elite.
And it's intentional.
But as Tim pointed out, there were always going to be an elite. The question is, who are they and what are their values?
Exactly. Yeah, totally. I completely agree with that. So,
I almost wonder if social media makes it so we're more fractured. You'll get these smaller conclaves of subcultures, and maybe they'll mix with one another, but ultimately it is one of the things that making it harder for people to identify like overall arching national values, overarching national preferences, things like that. When you had these
silos.
When you have these silos and you have only 5 cable channels or whatever, some mainstream organizations, like, yes, they're controlling the narrative, but also it's easier to identify the narrative. I think you see a much more fractured perspective with the rise of the internet.
I think so. I think that you have a point, but I do think that if you are,
you get to stay here and not go to the camps, Phil.
No, you don't. Yeah, you're going to the camps
You're fired.
just because you're a woman. Remember,
Oh my gosh.
But I figured we go all in.
You can't re-educate me out of my gender, no matter what they say.
I mean,
oh yes, they can.
I tell you what.
So that's in your camp then.
So you just haven't met someone that's committed to re-education the way that you need to be committed to it.
There's this story that I was told a long time ago about, I don't know the history of it, but a wise man comes across, a man is traveling and he comes across a field where people are pointing spears saying, "Help us, there's a monster." And there's a watermelon in the middle of the field, and he says, no, watch. And he walks in, slices it open, and then shows the watermelon. All of the villagers freak out screaming, "He's a monster and he'll kill us next," and run away in terror. Later on, another man is walking when he sees them once again. A different man sees them pointing spears at the watermelon, and they say, "Look, there's a monster." And he yells to them, "You're right, quick, run with me and flee." And then once they all run, now trusting him, having saved their lives, he eventually leads them to the realization it is a food to be harvested. And the point of the story is that if you try and just defy the ideas of a mob, if you come up against them or tell them they're wrong, they may just be against you. And so there's a defensive nature to the human psyche, and that is, if you approach someone as an outsider, they will naturally be defensive and reject ideas you may present to them. But if you approach them as a friend, they're more likely to agree with you. It's just that simple. If you walk up to someone and you tell them that they're wrong and their ideas are causing problems and harm, they will become defensive. They'll get insulted. They will argue with you. If you go up to them and agree with them and say, "Yes, I think we're doing great. Have you considered maybe this too?" They might be like, "Oh, that's interesting. I might consider that."
Yeah.
That's what we have to be doing.
Yeah, I agree.
That's good.
It's not easy, though, because you do have individuals on the left who I think are overtly evil.
I think so.
I think that the nature of communism is evil. That's it. End of story. It defies all that we define as good in every context. The idea that you would strip someone of their will is just like the epitome of evil. And beyond that, subjugating people, stealing from them. And they lie about every aspect of what they're doing to invert it, saying,
they invert everything.
Yeah.
You are going to rob people. And they say things like, "Shouldn't the workers all have the fruits of the labor?" Yes, I agree. So vote for me, and that's what will happen. Now we control everything. Of course, I'm in charge, so I determine where it goes, but that's us.
Right.
That's the manipulation. Just evil. And so they lie. They lie to get what they want.
They use rhetoric that's the absolute inverse of reality.
Yeah, it's like against nature, in my opinion. It doesn't make sense. Like, we humans are out to compete to gain resources, but this one is in itself is anti-competition. So,
but we have a balance of the competition for resources in that we do compete to grow the best crop to make the best product, but we're not doing it to destroy or kill
each
someone
other.
else.
There's cooperation in all that too.
Right.
There's human cooperation, which comes with basically human organization. But the difference is the communists want to take away your property and yourself first and foremost, and that's, as you said, that's like taking away your will. They want to make you a slave to start. Yep. That's the beginning of it.
Yeah, I mean, the motivation that people say they have doesn't line up with the way they behave. It always comes out as, "Oh, we're doing this for to be kind, etc., and stuff like that." There's no kindness in having the government give charity on your behalf, or more likely the government, tax other people or whatever, so that way they can, whether it be a tax through inflation or direct taxes, tax the population so that way they can give away stuff in your name. That's not charity. It's not being a good person.
Go ahead. No, and they use these terms like equality and inclusion and diversity and equity, and really all of these things are about squelching you and squashing you under a totalitarian.
And
Well,
then
it's-
people like Mark Cuban are the perfect conflux of ignorance and arrogance.
Yeah.
They go on a social media to millions of people and say things that are completely false with absolute confidence and then get corrected. Don't care.
They don't care.
Yeah. The idea that that you can make people that are that are unable to do things, whatever context you want. So people that are unable to reach the top shelf, you cannot make that person able to reach that
Yeah,
top
but they
shelf.
can cut the legs off of the guy who can.
But they can cut the legs off of a guy that can. So the only way you can make the unable, or you cannot make the unable able. So the only way you can make things equal
Is
is if you
disable
make
the
the
abled.
able people unable.
Yep.
That's the only way it's possible.
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.